Hey everyone, it's your Peacekeeper coming at you with the next video in our How to Play series on the Japanese battleship line. This is the Tier 6 Fusou class of battleships. The Fusou class of battleships were a pair of battleships built in 1912 and 1913. The two ships of the class are Fusou and Yamashiro. The design basis for the Fusou class borrowed heavily on British design studies done for the Kongo-class battlecruisers, with the usual Japanese flair for having better armor, more guns, and faster speed than either the US or Royal Navy counterparts. The Fusou class, like many of the Japanese battleships, was intended to fight a single decisive battle in Japanese waters, and thus long cruising ranges and better fuel economy was sacrificed for increased and improved protection. At their launching in 1914 and 1915, the two Fusou sisters would be powered by a mix of coal and fuel oil, but during the 1930s refits, they were upgraded to oil-fired boilers, powering Brown Curtis steam turbines. Unfortunately, the Fusou sisters would never be built to withstand their own firepower. With a 12-inch main belt, they lacked sufficient immunity zone to their own guns, as was typical of pre-Jutland-era battleships. This is in contrast to the New York class of ships that the Fusou was designed specifically to best, and that kind of came back to bite them in the butt a little bit here, and we'll talk about that as we dive into their service history. Both ships served in World War I and World War II, however, neither saw combat during World War I, and both were lost at the Battle of Surigao Strait in 1944. The ships primarily spent their early days of World War II around Japanese Mainland islands, and even after the Doolittle raid, pursued but failed to catch the U.S. carriers that launched the Doolittle raid. Both ships would be utilized extensively as training ships to train crews for other Japanese battleships. That is, at least until the Battle of Surigao Strait, when they were pressed into combat. During the battle, the Japanese forces would be attacked by aircraft, which significantly damaged Fusou, causing her to fall out of formation. A torpedo or two, launched by the USS Melvin, hit Fusou amidships, causing the ship to eventually upend, capsize, and sink within about 40 minutes. And only 10 people survived that whole ordeal. Yamashiro would continue to sail on into what would be one of the more famous and last battleship versus battleship fights in history. Lying in wait for the Yamashiro were the survivors of the Pearl Harbor attack in the form of 6 battleships, 5 of which were at Pearl Harbor. And, of course, with those U.S. battleships was a fleet of light and heavy cruisers with destroyer escorts. At 03:53 hours, the West Virginia opened fire at a range of 22,800 yards, or 20.8 kilometers, striking Yamashiro 5 times in her first 6 salvos without ever having a returning shot fired by Yamashiro. The other remaining U.S. standards locked onto the shell splashes of the West Virginia and began firing as firing solutions became possible. Only the Pennsylvania did not fire at the end because her fire control setup wasn't quite as advanced, and they just never really got a solid enough bearing, and they worried a lot about hitting friendly ships trying to fire over them, so they did not fire. The USS Mississippi only fired 1 salvo, and that 1 salvo would be the last salvo fired by a battleship against another battleship. Yamashiro would eventually be sunk by torpedoes from U.S. destroyers. In terms of their in-game gameplay style, Fusou is actually a lot of fun, and she owes a large part of this to the fact that she has such good range on the main battery, very good hit points, a solid torpedo damage reduction, a strong secondary battery, but more importantly, she has the highest rate of fire of any 14-inch gun battleship in the game, to my knowledge, at 28 seconds, compared to like the likes of New Mexico and Arizona, which at this tier have a 34.6 and 35-second reload time respectively. So 28 seconds is blazingly fast. It's plenty quick for even 16-inch gun battleships, which we'll get to eventually. And that definitely is noticeable when you're piloting her, because the guns pack a wallop. They certainly aren't lacking, and there's 12 of them. These things are offset, though, by her somewhat low speed, weak armor, and massive detection range, coupled with really rather mediocre AA. And those things really do help balance the ship out a lot, but the one thing I noticed, and I pointed it out in my first video, and the first time I ever played this ship, I had a massive game in it, just an absolutely fantastic game. I think it was like 176,000 damage. I was really impressed. And I've gone on to play a couple more games in her, and they've been consistently good. So I know that the ship is very, very solid. Let's go dive into those stats, because that's something else that we need to talk about as well. She has 57,100 hit points. Her main belt is only 12 inches. Her torpedo protection damage reduction system is 36%, so she sees a 36% reduction on torpedo damage. That main battery consists of 12 14-inch 45 caliber guns. They are in 6 dual turrets. You got 2 super firing pairs in the front, 2 amidships and opposing pairs, and then 2 super firing pairs in the rear. The secondary battery consists of 4 dual 5-inch 40 caliber Type 89s. Those also serve as dual purpose guns, so they also come back to play in the anti-aircraft. She also has 14 6-inch 50 cal secondary guns, and those secondaries pop in at 4.2 kilometers, and that's going to be without any of the range boosting mods. No AFT, no secondary battery mod in this. I think it's the second slot. Yeah, it's the second slot. So that's just base range right there. Main battery fires out to 21.8 kilometers, but that is extended with our spotting aircraft. So you get actually even further. And there is actually enough accuracy to get consistent hits at that range. So definitely a very long-range battleship. The anti-aircraft guns, well, you have 17 of the single 25mm 60 Type 96s and 10 of the dual 25mm 60 caliber Type 96s, as well as those 4 dual 5-inch 40 cal Type 89s. 5K is where your AA circle goes out to, and then it steps down to 3.1K with those 25mm. In terms of maneuverability, the ship has a maximum speed of 24.5 knots, 740 meter turning radius, and 12-second rudder shift time. Now, like a couple of the other Japanese battleships that we'll talk about later, at part rudder inputs, it doesn't seem like the ship likes to turn, so it really only starts to come in as the rudder starts getting past that halfway point all the way into the full in one direction. So keep that in mind when you're playing this ship, that you really have to plan that much further in advance. Now, the big downside to Fusou, 18.3 kilometer detection range by sea and 12.2 kilometer detection range by air. There are maps in this game, when you spawn in a Fusou, as soon as that countdown timer hits 0, you are detected. And that is something that is very difficult for many people to get used to. And given how soft the armor is on this ship, that can be a massive detriment if you're not prepared for it. Let's talk about upgrades. In the first upgrade slot, I am going to run Main Armaments Mod 1. However, Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1 is also acceptable. In truth, I would probably run Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1 over Main Armaments Mod 1, simply because running preventative maintenance on your captain handles the main battery getting incapacitated stuff, so this allows you to keep your AA and secondaries in action. More worried about the AA than I am the secondaries, but if you like to play up close and personal, keeping those secondaries in the fight is a good thing too. In the second slot, Aiming Systems Mod 1, that's what I would recommend for the reduction and dispersion of your main battery shells, as well as a slight increase to the to your secondary battery firing range and a slight decrease in the dispersion of your secondary battery. Speaking of secondaries, if you're one of those secondaries junkies and want to play the ship up close and personal, probably not the strongest suit for this ship, but if you do decide to play that way, secondary battery mod 2, not a bad choice to increase the range and decrease the dispersion of them by 20%. And last but not least, if you just absolutely hate aircraft carriers, AA Guns Mod 2 is going to push out your AA bubble another 20%. In the third slot, Damage Control Systems Mod 1 for the reduction in fire and flood chance, as well as the increase in the TDS value of the ship. That's that torpedo damage reduction. Really, none of the other options here are really all that viable because you don't lose your engines or your steering gears that often. When they do, it's usually because of a torpedo. In the last slot, Steering Gears Mod 2 exclusively. I can't stress this enough. Battleship maneuverability is critical to 1, evading shots that are incoming, and 2, dealing with torpedoes. So I definitely recommend taking the Steering Gears Mod 2. There's really no use for Propulsion Systems Mod 2 on a battleship, so the only other one that would really be viable is Damage Control Systems Mod 2, and I just don't think that this mod makes up for the slower rudder shift time. So let's dive into a battle video. We got a lot more to talk about in that video. Alright, so this battle is going to be a Tier 7 fight, and it is going to be on the new map, Haven? Yes, Haven. You can see we have a hood on our team. There's a, fairly even split here of battleships. They've got a Dunkirk. We've got a Texas. That kind of rounds it out. Scharnhorst versus Hood. Interesting pairing up. You can see we are in the really rather ugly Ocean Souls camo, and we have spawned basically dead center. And usually on this map, it kind of depends on the enemy flow and depends on what ship I'm in. In battleships, I tend to go towards the south and into the, not into, but around those islands. Very rarely will I go to the north in a battleship, and the reason for that is quite simple. If you go to the north, you pull yourself out of the fight. There's just too many islands that are too tall to shoot over, and it really doesn't do your team any good to pull, your heavy battery out of a fight. We will end up in the northern part of this map, not way north, but in that northern set of rings there, kind of where the indicate my bow indicator is currently pointing, which is where I'm kind of headed to, at least on the initial outset of this map at this point. As this battle develops, we will do quite a lot of moving and flexing about the battle, and you'll get to see a lot of angling and a lot of maneuvering and kind of flexing about the map. Now, at 25 knots, you're really not flexing much on the map. You're not, Congo speed. You're definitely not going to be, like Iowa or Scharnhorst or Gneisenau speed. You're really not that much faster than anything else. I think you actually match or slightly slower than Bayern's speed. But anyway, you can see here we've started to go now to the west to stay on the southern route here. I'm going to rotate my guns the other way. Of interesting note, the primary difference between the Fusou and the Issei class of battleships is that number 4 turret there in the middle is flipped so that it faces forward, so that the only 2 turrets that would face rearward would be the 2 in the rear, turrets 5 and 6. And really interesting configuration there. That was probably the biggest difference between them. Of course, at the end of World War II, Issei and her sister Hyuga ended up becoming what would be labeled as BBVs. That would be a battleship that has the rear deck area converted into a seaplane tender kind of area. And the Japanese were particularly fond of this design scheme. It really wasn't terribly effective at all. Okay, so we've got a couple of ships here. We're looking for ships that are broadside to us. We're not really doing all that hot with the spotting distances here. And you can see Dunkirk is turning, so that's kind of frustrating. Well, we'll come down here. Ooh, Emile? Can we get Emile? No. Can we get a meal? I make myself last. Okay, so Scharnhorst, we're going to shoot at you since we're being detected anyway. Look at that shot group. Now, granted, 16k out, but look at that shot group. That's a pretty solid shot group. And, wow, only 2,000 damage. 3 hits out of 12 guns. It's not even 25% accuracy. Especially for how tight that shot group looked. So we got incoming fire now from a... Is that the Miyoko? No, those are battleship shells. I don't remember which battleship it was that was shooting. Probably that New York that's way back there. Well, it could be Congo. So we'll go ahead and we'll rotate, and we will... dang it, he disappeared. Okay, back to Mr. Scharnhorst. Nope, there's an island in the way. And this is one of the downsides to, you know, the very early onset of this, is there's really not a whole lot to shoot at least on the initial outset, because, well, quite honestly, you've got so many islands in the way. And I think that's part of the reason why this map is so much fun and why this is a very solid map. Oh, Shiratsuyu. Well, you're kind of a threat, so we'll shoot at you. Maybe we can get lucky and get some good hits on you. 2 more overpens. Well, that was a little bit more of an expected result than the previous one. Shiratsuyu, you know, 16 torpedoes, that could hurt. And because I'm anticipating him having launched them, I will go ahead and turn away. The other reason why I'm turning away is you can kind of see how our northern flank isn't really pushing terribly hard. And it's definitely something we definitely need to pay attention to. Broadside Scharnhorst. Maybe we'll get lucky and get more hits this time. Yes, but really not a whole lot of damage done. Oh, not off to a good start. Why did I pick this battle? Well, I picked this battle because, quite honestly, this does a really good job of showing some of the strengths and weaknesses. Now, obviously, the 14-inch AP isn't really penetrating Scharnhorst armor all that well. It shouldn't really be too much of a surprise to people. That shot looks like it's going to be way ahead. But I could be wrong. Look at that. Jeez. That is a really tight shot grouping. And all of it bounced. We hit with 5, and it all bounced. And Nicholas ducks and weaves. Will he survive? It makes coffee and julienne fries. Will it break? Will it? Will it? So we got a Cleveland here. Ooh, Congo. This Cleveland is just barely creeping around, so we'll engage him. That Scharnhorst did finally go down. And boom! Down goes the Cleveland. I will take that. That leaves us to deal with the Congo and pretty much their whole fleet, because look at how quickly this battle has devolved. We have only sank 4, they have sank 6. We are not in a good position right now. We really need to step it up, and I have contributed nothing in this match except for killing off a Cleveland. So now we got ourselves a Congo that is sitting largely broadside to us. That's a Padlin. Of course, it'd be a Padlin if I could actually get the hits I wanted to. 5 total hits. 6 hits, 5 total damaging hits, 4 overpens, and a normal pen somehow adds up to a rather healthy 7K. No. That should definitely have been more. Thanks, Wargaming, for the it's a penetrating hit. I don't think so. Just rude. So, one of the downsides to Fusou is that her gunnery, her midship guns, the 2 guns in the middle, turrets 3 and 4, they do have a nasty tendency to be obscured by the giant pagoda masts at the either end, and so even though you get the green icon indicating that you can shoot, you don't always get all of the guns on target, which is really unfortunate. So now we're turning, and this Emile Bertin is definitely coming around in a broadside profile. We only have the front 3 guns up, but we'll go ahead and engage at 5 overpens for 5,000 damage. No! I can guarantee you that Emile launched torpedoes. Who wants to take bets? Alright, so now he's going to turn the other way to launch what I'm assuming is the other set. Go ahead and do that for me, would you? Yep. 3 overpens for 3,000 damage. That doesn't sound right to me either. Getting kind of lucky here. Oh! That's unlucky. 2 Citadel hits and a Dev Strike. Down he goes, and look, there's the torpedoes. Who would have thought? I'm willing to bet that there's a second set of torpedoes coming in as well. At this point, it really would behoove me to wait. With how quick the reload time is, we've got a Bayern that is sailing backwards and broadside. I wish he would pop back up. But more importantly, we've got this New York here, and the match really hasn't changed. Like, the circumstances in the match really hasn't changed much. We are still getting smoked. Oh, New York is shooting at me. That's rude. Shoot at him and turn in. And there are a lot of friggin' torpedoes. And 2 of my shells hit. So we are going to eat 2 torpedoes. Lucky we did not detonate, but that was half of my hit points just poof, gone. And we now are taking fire from multiple angles. Apparently we've become a threat. Who would have thought? We are angled just enough to bring all of our guns to bear, and this is probably one of the more critical aspects of playing Fusou. Yep. There's 10k off of that New York. Probably should have been a Citadel hit in there, but it didn't aim quite low enough to get one. And so, again, angling. You can see there we forced an overpen. And there we got hit, but took no damage. He is turning broadside. Should have been more patient. And that's why. That could have been more penetrating hits. And, we're going to get in ourselves a brawl with the original brawler. Before the German line, we had the U.S. battleship line, and the New York was particularly potent. You can see I'm angled just enough to where shells that are impacting are bouncing. Now, he is presenting just an amazing broadside profile here, and this is not a battle that he is going to win handily because I have a rate of fire advantage, and down he goes. And so, yeah, he did take a chunk there off while I was turning outwards, and good for him for, recognizing that. But we have managed to turn the tide of this battle. And provided nobody potatoes out and does anything silly, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to at least do well. Now, unfortunately, they have a destroyer left, and our last cruiser is a Pensacola. It is all the way up by their spawn. He was basically going to go for the cap, but I think he made the right decision in bailing out as ASAP. Okay, so we are looking for targets to shoot at here because we have none. This is a bad habit to get into. And yeah, we're going to shoot that. And the reason I say this is a bad habit to get into is because, I spent a lot of time in the scope and not a lot of time doing anything aside from 4 hits for 13,000 and not a lot of time maneuvering. Now I'm not detected, so we're good, but there was a destroyer that launched a very unhealthy wave of torpedoes earlier. We are up to 80,176 damage, and we are going up to try and help our Texas as best we possibly can, because our other ships are horribly out of position right now. We have a Koenig, which is very out of position, and I don't know what battleship that is. New Mexico. It's a New Mexico. That is, we can write him off. He is not coming back to this battle. I can just guarantee you that if he gets into this battle, it will be at the very end, and it will be very minimal contribution, if any at all. And there you can see me potato a shot that should have resulted in multiple hits, and we get none because I underled him way too much. And that ultimately comes back to bite me in the butt. So now we're continuing our charge to help this Texas out. And unfortunately, not a whole lot of targets out there. And God, that looked like it was way overled. Just not having a good time with gunnery at this point. Yes! We've got a normal pen for 3,400 damage. Oh my goodness. You can see how the rate of fire thing, though, is really starting to add up. It really is quite advantageous to have this rate of fire. Now, this Bayern, we don't need to lead him as much this time, game in me. But we do need to save our Texas because he is getting his butt kicked. Now, unfortunately, there are plenty of ships. Ooh, there's a good hit, 12,000 damage. The Texas is coming back. I am at like half health. I'm trying to get this Koenig back into the fight. Our New Mexico did what? He sank, so I'm assuming that means that the destroyer got him. I'd have to go back and watch the replay again. So this Bayern is just continuing to sail broadside, but so is our Texas. And hope. Come on, give me some hits. Yeah, we got a couple hits in there, but not really any damage. Up to 98,383 damage, and we are beaching. This is not good. We'll say this. This is not a battle I would use for an explanation on situational awareness. This is not a good battle for that. In fact, I am still detected. That should be a clue that something bad is about to happen. And in reality, that's an element of truth. I mean, the Congo, yes. Lead and fire. Being detected and not seeing what's detecting you, you can make some pretty healthy assumptions about what's there. Oh, 21,557 damage. Dang near taking this Congo completely out of the fight. However, I am stationary and really going to have to turn broadside. Come on, guns, reload quicker. We need this guy out of this fight. No, lead more. God dang it. Oh, come on, get him. Yes. Oh, we even got a Citadel hit out of it. Sweet. Fiji. Yeah. Hey, buddy. You may have popped your smoke, but the minute you start shooting at me, I'm going to be able to engage you, especially since I know roughly where you were at in this mess. Aha! I found you. There's really no super secret squirrel way to do that. You can see there, we managed to get a Citadel hit on him. There's no super secret squirrel way of accomplishing this. It's just experience. If you've got the spotting plane up in the air, that helps out a lot because you get a little bit better angle of where he's at. You can see based on his guns, and I'm assuming based on usual Royal Navy cruiser tactics, and I'm waiting for him to shoot again. Okay, so you can see he's backing up. So we want to give him enough lead towards the back there. Look at that tight cluster grouping. 2 overpens, so we know we're getting some hits in there. Unfortunately, you know, our cap is being capped, and that does not help the situation any. And we are still taking fire from him. Okay, now he's moving forward again. And unfortunately, presenting just enough of a profile. I wish he'd come out and play. Hey, another Citadel hit. He's got to be getting pretty frustrated by this. Oh, torpedoes. And a good healthy dodge there. We're going to turn on our damage control party here. You know, unfortunately, we're going to have to make up our mind here. We know that the destroyer is behind us, which is a good place for him to be. We're a little bit closer here, so it's a little bit harder to gauge where the shots are going to come from. No, you need to stay zoomed in, but you need to be WASDing as well. Okay, so where is he? There he is. I swear, we're going to get the Kraken. Nope, we're not. Look at how much damage I did to him, though. There's really no good way to deal with this because, let's face it here, this Fiji is going to continue this tirade of his, and there's not much I can do. My König is going back to deal with their destroyer. I've got torpedoes inbound that I'm not really paying attention to, but they missed anyway. Good news. You know, so just overall, there's really not much I could do in this fight except for just continuing to charge, present as little of a profile as I can to both ships to try and mitigate as much damage as possible, but ultimately that auto pen angles on the Fiji are just going to make it very difficult to do much. And plus he's healing, which is really annoying. But again, we got 24 seconds until my heal is up, and unfortunately the Bayern takes me out of this fight. 153,513 damage, 8 Citadel hits, 4 sinks, and as you can see, we are going to lose this game. Yes, Kraken denied. We managed to get the high caliber out of it, but I almost sank that Fiji while he was sitting in smoke. And it just goes to show that there's no, you know, trickery on my end to, you know, the shooting in smoke thing. You just get real used to tactics of ships in smoke, and it's very easy to pick that up and play it to your advantage. Anyway, Fusou is really, it really is a lot of fun. There's really nothing bad to say about this ship, and there's the end of the game. Aside from that detection range, aside from the seemingly lack of armor pen capability of those shells, and alright, so already said the damage. You can see 1,455 XP. That would have put me on third on their team. Would have put me on first if we would have won. There you can see it was all done by AP. There's the credits and XP screen. Anyway, I do enjoy Fusou. It is a permanent resident in my port at Tier 6, competing against the likes of New Mexico and Arizona. That says a lot because I like those two ships a lot. But anyway, throw down in the comments what you guys thought about Fusou. I'm your Peacekeeper. Like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for watching.